Hello again and welcome to the third episode of the Behavioral Technology Show. I've got a surprise for you today, so make sure you keep watching. Incidentally, I received an email from a viewer asking if behavioral technology only applies to new HR and WFM software. The answer is definitely not. And today I'll show you how you don't need all the bells and whistles to effectively empower people through technology. Okay, so hands up if you have ever binge watched a series on Netflix, and a few days later, when a friend asks you about it, you have a tough time remembering what happened. But in comparison, you still remember details of a series that you watched that only played one episode a week. Why is that? So when something remains incomplete or a task is interrupted, our minds keep thinking about it, even though we are doing other things. We build a mental tension, and this tension helps us recall information about a task, much better in fact, up to 90% better. It also does other things like motivating us to go back and complete a task. This concept of unfinished business is why we remember weekly serialized TV shows better than the binge watch. This human oddity is known as the Zeigarnik effect, and we can use it to our advantage in HR and WFM configuration design. A simple example is the use of progress bars, the ones that say 20, 40 or 90% complete. And you'll find these features in most HR and WFM systems. Switching it on triggers the Zeigarnik effect for an incomplete task. And this causes most employees to keep thinking about the goal and how to complete it. Even a single automated email reminder of an unfinished goal triggers the Zeigarnik effect in people. Another space to use the Zeigarnik effect is in the development of e-learning. If you allow users to power through a course in a single session, their recall of the learning content is likely to be significantly reduced. It's far better to insert purposeful interruptions into the course design to promote better recall. For example, the learner may only be able to complete the course assessment 24 hours after the course is completed. Because the learning is unfinished, it occupies an expanded place in our memory, and this cements the content to long-term memory. As a responsible employer, though, while it's important to understand human behavior can be directed to empower and enrich employee experiences, you should also be aware of the downside. And today, I've invited Gillian Lampacher, a friend, ex-colleague, and a psychologist who is, among other things, a really passionate mental health advocate. Welcome to the show, Jill. I'm so glad you could be my first guest on the show. The Zeigarnik effect can have positive effects on recall, motivation, reduce procrastination, and build a sense of accomplishment and promote confidence. But are there things we should consider from a mental health perspective before introducing it?
Yes, interesting, Rob, in terms of the Zeigarnik effect. What's fascinating about it is the tendency of the brain to kind of remember incomplete or unfinished tasks. So it's something that happens that, and you'll know it yourself, like in terms of our to-do list is we'll wake up in the morning, we'll sit at work and we'll say, what are all the things that I need to get done? And we'll be focusing quite a lot on those things that we haven't finished. So that unfinished task, it creates a sense of motivation and a sense of drive, and it sits in our mind. But the negative part of it is it can cause distress as well, where we feel like we haven't achieved anything and we're holding on to that as well.
Great. So it sounds like keeping a balanced approach is important. But even in those cases, will the Zeigarnik effect always work?
So not necessarily always going to work, and it depends so much on the individual as well. You can have a tendency as well to fixate on it and then really not to feel positive around it at all, and it can lead to procrastination. But it's really around, how do we get strategies around that as well, in terms of how do we work with it, from that side. So it's not necessarily for some people, like the emotional energy around it can be really worrying as well, to the extent that they stop and they struggle. But for other people, it can be like a positive motivator there too.
So importantly, the Zeigarnik effect isn't always a silver bullet. And finally, Jill, what advice would you offer viewers exploring the behavioral technology space?
So I think in terms of like mental health and just really looking at things where like just knowing all our tasks and those things can produce a lot of stress, one of the recommendations I always make to people is to make sure that you have a plan and to put those tasks in place in terms of a plan.
Fantastic input, Jill. Thank you for making time to be on the show and sharing your knowledge and insights. In summary, using the Zeigarnik effect has a positive impact on better recall, increased motivation, decreased procrastination, confidence and accomplishment, increased productivity, and greater experience. But using it appropriately and with careful consideration on employees' mental health is both ethically the right thing to do and protects your credibility as a people function. Till next time, take care.